the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob.
Each generation, over time it was just the God of Abraham.
Good.
As time went on, it became other people's gods.
Right. So he could have said the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But it says the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. So, Eli, of course, you're making an awesome point, which is there's a teaching that every generation has its own letter in the Torah. For example, today we live in an age of information technology. So we can see from a satellite depiction how our world, planet Earth, is one cohesive entity. Right? We see the ball of the Earth, so to speak, orbiting around the sun and the solar system. Now, the Kabbalists already taught hundreds of years ago that when a person reaches a state of expansive mindfulness, gadlut mochin, then they can really see that everything in the world is connected within the infinity of God. In order to live in the world, we need to separate. So we separate in space and time. We say we are here, Jerusalem is 7,500 miles away, today is Thursday, tomorrow will be Friday. But first, of course, we know time is just a human concept. It's not an objective reality, right? There is just sunrise and sunset and sunrise and sunset. We invented those artificial thing called time so we can orient ourselves. And we look at the world as analytically, that the world is fragmented, right? I'm here, the coffee is there, Israel is there. But really, when you look at the world from outside the world, what do you see? We're all just in that ball. Just like your toe is not separated, your pinky toe is not separated from you, right? So we can see that, but previous generations intuited that spiritually, we can see that. And similarly, not only every generation has their letter in the Torah, every individual soul has its own letter in the Torah. The way you read Torah, the way I read Torah, nobody will ever read. Because you bring your spiritual DNA. You bring the uniqueness of your neshama. You bring the uniqueness of your memories, fears, aspirations, dreams, sensitivities, sensibilities. It's one of the most beautiful midrashes that I know. It says, look how cool God is. I think I may have mentioned it last week. That when a human being makes a coin, right? I may have said it last week.
Oh, yeah.
That a quarter or a dime or a nickel, they all come out the same. But when God coins the human face, every human face is unique, let alone every neshama. Even today with cloning, you can physically clone the animal or the person, but you cannot clone the neshama, because neshama has to do with the memory and all these things that you can't duplicate. So that's why we say the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Because each one of them developed a unique relationship with God. And each one of them had specific mitzvot that they excelled in. Abraham was about, we said in the Kabbalah class on Shabbat, is about chesed, loving kindness, unconditional love. He's addicted to giving, so to speak. Right? Yitzchak is about self-discipline, the ability to nullify myself, I wish I had more of that, and submit to God's will. Yitzchak is somebody who is able to completely shrink their ego. Whether it's an Israeli soldier who's storming Hamas during a campaign in Gaza to protect the people of Israel, or whether it's doing a mitzvah that really pushes our comfort zone. And Yaakov was really the balance of the two. But the point is that on the one hand, we should connect to the tradition as heirs of the tradition. But on the other hand, we should forge a personal relationship with God. And that's why it says God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. Right?
Can I make a comment?
Yes, please.
When you said about cloning, even today, when you clone
Sure, yeah.
But different because neshama is different.
Right.
Can we make such statement? How do we know that the neshama is not identical?
Well, it's a great question, and one of the things that's important to do is that the most important things in life, somebody wrote a book or wrote in the last 10 years maybe in sociology about the difference between the price of things and the value of things, right? It's two different things. For example, once we were robbed in New Jersey. My wife lost her jewelry. She didn't care so much about the money, even though it was worth several thousand. She cared about the fact that some of those things were from her late grandmother that she would have liked to give her daughters or granddaughters. Mm-hmm. So there's the price of things, there's the value of things. Mm-hmm. Now, the things that we live for, the things that really give us joy and vitality, they don't have barcodes. Love. Does love exist? You could argue that love doesn't exist. You could go to a wedding and say, you know what? Here you have two mammals, humans. 97% of their DNA is identical with chimpanzees. They happen to have gotten stuck in the elevator together. If not, they would have married somebody else. What's the big deal? People get married for emotional reasons, for financial reasons, for reasons of social conventions. Evolutionarily, maybe we're hardwired to be monogamous. You can look at it like that. Or you can say there's love, there's devotion, there's something sacred and unique between two individuals. Friendship, loyalty, dedication, right? These are the things, sacrifice, these are the things that we really live for. Can we prove their existence in the physical world? Absolutely not, because they don't exist in the physical world.
Okay.
They're spiritual.
But they demonstrate by action.
They are what makes life worth living, right? It's like in the Whitney Houston song, "Loving you makes life worth living." It's about the people we love, and it's about God. So
too bad she didn't believe it herself.
I think she was actually a believing Christian, but unfortunately she came from Newark, which is a very poor town in New Jersey that's full of crime. I used to live in New Jersey, and she grew up with drugs, and she had a terrible upbringing, and she wasn't able to emancipate herself and break the cycle. But to my knowledge, I don't think she was like a not good person. I think she never managed to. She didn't have the inner tools to capitalize on what Hashem has given her. That's a long conversation. Why are the Elvis Presleys and the Marilyn Monroes and the Michael Jacksons, all these people, they had everything that the secular culture said you want. Hundreds of millions, billions of people admire you. You have fame, you have glory, you have incredible wealth, and still those people were miserable, and tragically that misery killed them. And that is a very resounding statement about what we're going to read in the Torah in a few weeks. In the new book of Deuteronomy, we're going to start next Shabbat, God willing. It says, man does not live on bread alone.
Were they missing?
Not even on sushi or steak.
Finishing up. Oh,
right?
Okay.
Were they missing the connection to God? Was that what was wrong?
It's part of it. I'm going to save it to when we get to that parashat, because there's a whole thing. There's a hierarchy of personal development in the Kabbalah that modern psychologists have tapped into partially, that we will speak about Bezrat Hashem. But we're going back now. So the first bracha of the Amidah is always the same: the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. The second one, there's more to be said about this bracha, but I'm going to skip. The second one is God is the one who enlivens the dead, mechayeh hamitim. And that means two things. One is, according to Maimonides' 13 principles of Judaism that we sing on Friday night. Yigdal Elokim. So one of them is Metim Yechayel Berov Chazdo. God will resuscitate the dead. So there is an explicit principle in Jewish spirituality that those who are deceased will return. Now,
The body
there are
and
many
the spirit.
gradations to it. I'm not going to get into that because it's very complicated and requires a lot of explanations and how do we kind of stomach it with our modern scientific sensibilities and dispositions. But I will say this, that there's a Hasidic teaching that I recommend you take with you for the rest of your life, which is that when you read that second paragraph of the Amidah about God as the one who enlivens the dead, you think about those parts of you that are lying dormant within you as if they are dead, that you're so numb to them. There are things within us that we completely neglected. Parts of us, giving charity, studying Torah, spending more time with kids or I don't know what it is, but there are parts of us, sometimes, life puts us in a straitjacket. And we kind of put certain parts of us on hold to protect ourselves because of traumas, because we're too overwhelmed with anxiety about the things we have to deal with. So what this Bachai is saying, try to enliven those parts within you that are lying there as if they're dead.
And that's in the, what part did you say?
The second Bacha, Mechayeh Ametim,
Of the Amidah?
Yes.
Translate Mechayeh again.
who enlivens the dead. So we bless God, the one who enlivens the dead, the one who can help us reconnect, re-enliven those facets, those parts of us that are now just lying there as if lifeless.
Where is that found now?
That's in the Jewish prayer book. Now,
So it's not necessarily dead bodies that he's talking about. We're talking about whatever may be dead in a human being.
yes,
Whatever
that's
in that it's missing.
That's
or
one.
lacking.
That's one very deep way of understanding it. I remember I was in Rosh Hashanah maybe 14 years ago, somewhere in New York, and this French Jewish guy is telling me, we get to Mechayeh Ametim, and he's telling me, the French, très passionnés, they're very impassioned people. So he's telling us, Mechayeh Ametim, c'est nous qui sommes morts. C'est nous qui sommes morts. We are the dead ones. We are the dead ones. We're not fully living. Right? So, why did we start talking about this? I'll tell you exactly why. Because we're talking about the journeys, the 42 journeys in the second parashat, and how to live a full life. We have to fight very hard against the gravity that just makes us focus on today, the problems that we have today, at home, at work, whatever it may be. We have to find those times to look at our life as the comprehensive and majestic journey that it is. The journey of the neshama in this world. Think about it. We go from Egypt to Israel, right? 2/3 of the Torah is from Egypt to Israel. Most of the Torah is that journey, right?
2/3 of the Torah?
Yeah, even more. From the 15th parasha to the 54th parasha.
15th to 54th?
Yeah.
From Exodus,
Yeah. So, Mitzrayim, Egypt, is connected to the word Meitzarim, which means narrowness, a narrow pathway, like the Straits of Gibraltar. In Hebrew, the word strait, Mitzarim, and the word Mitzrayim, practically the same word.
Wow.
Think how we come into this world.
Yeah.
We come through our mother's womb. It's a very narrow place, right? I was a real problem. My mother would tell me for years they had to take those things like the ice cream things or
He
whatever
used
they take
forceps
salads
on you?
with
Forceps.
to take me out. And I had those little bumps, and my mother was like, "Is that going to
God,
stay?
They don't do that anymore.
He's not going to be able to get a date." It's like, no, it's going to go away. But she still tells me every now and then when I get over her nerves, "You just got stuck there and you wouldn't get out."
Well, he knew a good thing. He didn't want to leave.
I was like, well, they say the neshama is being told before it comes to the world, not to forget all the Torah that we know. You know, or when neshama is not in the body, the neshama is perfect. It lives with Hashem, somewhere nice on Wilshire corridor. But when we come to this world, we're in a body. It's much more difficult to connect to God. But it's one place we can have an impact. Why? Because when you do mitzvot, you can change the world. Like we said on Shabbat in the Kabbalah class. Every mitzvah that you do can bring more godliness to the world. But when we go back home to eternity, we can no longer impact the world.
So supposedly you received your neshama the minute of birth, or do you have a neshama in the womb?
That's very esoteric Kabbalah that I'm not sure I have the answer for you right now. There's a lot of literature on it, but I can't give you a precise answer on this second. But the journey, right, from Egypt to Israel, is a journey of the development of the self in the world. And the whole purpose of life is that journey. And as we've said before, notice we never enter Israel in the Torah. Moses dies, we're on the threshold of going into Israel, Simchat Torah, back to Bereshit. You don't reach perfection in this world. It's about going up the ladder, right? And that's what he said, the person who does 612 mitzvot and is stuck there. But the person who does 3 or 4 or 47, and every year or every week or every month they keep on climbing, they're doing better because they're moving. Right? Like Dr. King used to say, right? We're on the move now. Right? That's what it's about. But notice in the stops that, you know, when you look at it in the Torah, you'll see that sometimes they go back and forth. And that represents the fact that sometimes we regress in life. Progress is not linear. And I actually read something, you know what? I read something really interesting when we had parashat Pinchas from a contemporary Hasidic Rebbe. Passed away 17 years ago in Jerusalem. And he said a thing about transgressions, about misdeeds. When we fail, when we do something that that's really detrimental to us. You know, on Tuesday night we learned something I think very deep. We learned a metaphor that the world is like a grocery store and God is like the guy who owns the joint, and you can take anything you want on credit. But the notebook is open and the owner of the grocery store writes down everything that you take. And it also says, and know that there are creditors who come and collect from you all the time and you don't even know. It means that everything that we do has an impact on us, on our emotional, mental, spiritual makeup. And whether we think we got away with something, we didn't, because it leaves a mark on us. If it's a good thing, that's great. If it's not a good thing, it's also going to leave a mark. Not a good one.
Consequences for actions.
Right, it desensitizes us, it distances us from our inner core, it can corrupt us, it can create afterwards pains of regret. So...
Is the grocery store an original from you?
No, it's actually basically what it says. Baal HaChanut, the owner of the store. It's a metaphor.
It's really
Yeah, it's metaphorical and very deep.
Okay.
Now, we are working, what are we doing now? We're taking something from the parasha and we're working on techniques to implement it in our prayer life so we can upgrade our prayer life and our prayer experience. So the second to last bracha that we say in the Amidah is Modim Anachnu Lach. She'ata hu Hashem Elokeinu v'kei avotenu l'aved. And then it says that we thank God, very deep, Ve'al nisecha shebechol yom imanu, on your miracles that are always with us. What's the miracle? Maybe I forgot my key, so I wasn't in a car accident. I don't even know. On your miracles. Maybe the fact that
On the miracles that we say again?
Don't even know
that are
about.
with us every day,
Yeah, that's true.
right? And your wondrous deeds at every moment. And then we say Erev Avokir v'Tzoraim, evening, morning, and afternoon. Now, to live with a sense of wonder, that was a big thing for Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. But that's an opportunity during prayer. If you have the peace of mind and the spiritual patience, we don't always do, but when we do, when you get to that point, whether you read it in English or in Hebrew, and it says evening, morning, and afternoon, Erev Avokir Tzayim, to think. Let's say you're there on Shabbat morning. Baruch Hashem, I woke up today, I'm here in synagogue, I'm doing a great thing for myself, I'm in synagogue. Where was I last night? Did I have dinner? Who did I have dinner with? Thank God I have those people in my life. Thank God for the beautiful dinner. And what did I do yesterday in the afternoon? I did something at work. Thank God I have work. I was at home. Whatever it is. What did I eat? Thank God I ate something. You see what you're doing? You're creating a journey. It's the idea of living in a journey. Otherwise, we're just pulled to the here and now. Right? That's the idea of living a journey.
That's part of habit. Setting up a habit by the prayer.
Right,
process.
for sure. Now,
My mother-in-law,
yes,
exactly as you just stated, she's used to verbalize it. Everything she said, gracias a Dios, gracias a Dios, gracias a Dios. And my wife has picked up, call it 70, 80% of that habit.
Yeah.
She's constantly saying it as well. And it's so her friends, secular Jewish friends, make kind of fun. Thank God. Right now, you say thank God,
Yeah.
thank God.
Why do you think people make fun of it? I think people make fun because there are some, I don't know about friends, I'm talking from my own personal experience. Sometimes because people are embarrassed, it makes them feel awkward. The person is doing something culturally that they're not doing. So it's almost like a soft criticism. And maybe it's like, well, one of us is off. Either she's off because she's saying that all the time, or we're off because we're missing on something that she's doing that we're not doing that could be beneficial. But it's interesting, people have all kinds of reactions.
It just
You know?
reminded me of that, I thought I'd share it.
But verbalization is big. You know, Maimonides said that one of the best ways to prepare for Rosh Hashanah is to sit somewhere private and to say to yourself softly the things that you do that you don't want to do anymore. To say something like, you know, dear God, I really want to grow and be a better person. One of the things that's really hard for me is that every time I go to Trader Joe's, I steal a chocolate bar. And I really want to stop stealing a chocolate bar. And instead of saying a chocolate bar, you say, get angry with my wife or my husband or whatever it is you do that we all do, right? Verbalization has a lot of power. And that's why psychoanalysis was invented by Jews, because the power of the articulated word comes from Maimonides, comes from prayer. Things that you say have power, they have energy. And when you say something, you confront it. If you just think, oh, I wish I didn't do that, and then you think about what's for dinner, you repress it, right? When you say it, the power of saying it can redeem it, right? Some of you may remember 30 years ago, there was a series of horror movies called Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a guy called Freddy Krueger who would torment the children in their dreams, give them nightmares. And in one of the movies, they learned a trick. They would say to him, we know you're not real and we're having a dream. You're not real. And once they would say that, he would get disintegrated. So there's a power to words. Now, we started our session today saying that we have to be moving with the times, right? That parashat HaShavua is moving with the times. And we also said that in the second parasha Masei is called journeys. Now we are in a journey within the journey. The journey is the Jewish year. The Jewish year is called by some, or the Chagim, the seasons of the soul. The Chagim are the seasons of the soul. The idea is that we have two choices, fundamental choices. We can surrender and let our feelings run us, which is the natural condition.
Are you saying
Oh.
years are seasons of the soul?
Chagim, Jewish holidays.
Oh,
The Jewish annual cycle.
We can surrender and
Let our feelings run us. Somebody cut me on the street, somebody said something to me in some circumstance. You can let your feelings run you, or you can try and run your feelings. And Judaism is also a system that can help you be proactive about your feelings. So the different Jewish holidays, the different Chagim, are seasons of the soul. And if you connect to it, then you get into that season of the soul. For example, what's the season during the last month Elul and then Rosh Hashanah and the 10 days leading to Yom Kippur? Soul searching, spiritual accountability, right? Yom Kippur is the April 15th of the Jewish neshama, of the soul. And for a month and a half leading to it, starting Elul, we hear the shofar every morning, we start preparing, right? You have to prepare. So it's a season of introspection and personal accountability. You have Pesach, it's the season of celebrating political freedom. You have Purim, it's the season of taking the pleasures of this world and running with them. Now we are in the midst of a season of the soul called the 3 weeks. It started on Tuesday, 9 days ago, and it will continue.
With the fast of Tammuz?
Correct. Which is
the leading up to the Tisha B'Av.
right, which is a minor fast day that we have, which means minor means relatively from sunrise to sunset, a little bit more. It's like a 15, 16-hour fast, as opposed to Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av, which are the only 25-hour fasts, right? The full fasts. So, Tisha B'Av night will be on the 31st, and Tisha B'Av day would be on August 1st. So until after sundown, we'll see. Probably not. Not on August 1st. You're not allowed to study Torah on Tisha B'Av, except Torah that has to do with the destruction of the temple and things like that. Like you can read the prophecies in Jeremiah that the temple is going to be destroyed, but not the kind of Torah that just gives you. You're supposed to, be
depressed and sad.
So what's going on with these 3 weeks? So the 17th of Tammuz was the date. That's a 3-week period. It starts with the time in which the Romans started their siege on the walls of Jerusalem in the year 70 of the Common Era, in the 1st century. And it ends on Tisha B'Av, which is a day replete with historical meaning, where the first and second temple were destroyed. The spies came, according to tradition, with a negative report on Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is just a really scary date because the expulsion from Spain, the decree was issued on Tisha B'Av. World War I started on Tisha B'Av.
World War I?
Yes, which led ultimately to the rise of Nazism and the Holocaust. The liquidation of the Warsaw Ghetto, which was the largest ghetto in Europe during the Holocaust, was on Tisha B'Av. Coincidence. You can call it coincidence if you like. But we believe that, it's a day that lives in infamy, to quote FDR on his speech on the day of Pearl Harbor. Sorry?
December 7th.
Exactly. I always don't remember if it's December 6th or 7th, so thank you.
It's the 7th.
Yeah. So, people pointed out recently that Tisha B'Av, what does it mean, Tisha B'Av? Tisha means 9, and Av is the name of the month, which is the 11th month of the year. So 9 and 11, 9/11. Interesting, right?
Oh my God.
So,
Wait.
Nine.
Tisha means
nine.
9, and Av is the 11th month, so it's 9/11.
God.
My God.
So,
My father died September 11th, and it was the 9 of 11, because that year Shabbat was Tisha B'Av. The 9th.
so they postponed.
So the fast was on Sunday.
Right.
And after the fast on Sunday, that evening, he died.
Interesting. They say that the Mashiach will also come on Tisha B'Av, because everything turns
Everything
around.
will be dissolved.
Here's
all
something
the
really
past.
cool that Rabbi Soloveitchik teaches. Twice a year, on the Jewish annual cycle, it's mandatory to eat an egg. I'm not talking about the wev or something, but when during a chag or a special day. What are the days? Seder plate, right? And the other time, you say it's traditional to eat an egg on the meal before the fast on Tisha B'Av. It's like a wevo thing,
Yeah,
right?
the huevo.
And of course you eat a full egg, because it's the cycle of life. On Pesach we remind ourselves, on Pesach we're so regal, we think, oh, God took us out, thank God, we're free, we live in America, there's a state of Israel, we've gone so far. Baruch Hashem. It's supposed to be a regal meal, like kings and queens. You're supposed to recline when you drink each glass. We have the egg to remind us that we will have times of sorrow. You see? Then Tisha B'Av, you eat the egg to remind yourself that in life, sometimes you're down, sometimes you're really down, you'll go up again.
So on Tisha B'Av, when do you eat the egg? After the fast?
Before.
Before the fast.
So now, look how everything connects. It's really wonderful, because I was thinking, in the parashat we learn about the 42 journeys, and we said we start in Mitzrayim, Egypt, which is Meitzarim, straight, narrowness. What are these 3 weeks called in Hebrew? Ben HaMeitzarim, which means between the narrow places. These are 3 weeks of constriction, and that's why we take down a notch our joy. So, there are lots of halachot during this time of year. For example, no weddings during these 3 weeks, right? People are encouraged not to go to live music concerts. If you already have tickets or something, whatever. But
9 days
I was going to go to a concert.
You didn't hear me. You
so
heard me
the
go,
9
"Oi."
days, the 9 days,
Yeah.
we don't have meat and wine except on Shabbat.
That's
Shabbat, all bets are off.
Yeah.
So we deprive ourselves
What did you call it? The narrow. Say it again, please.
the narrow pathways. By the way, last night I discovered a great Jewish author who is considered one of the leading Jewish educators today. Her name is Erica Brown. And I started reading her book, Brown. I started reading her book about the 3 weeks last night. Now, I know some Jewish people with the last name Brown.
Really?
Yeah. I had a
Yeah.
It's like the name Miller. Could go either way. Could be Jewish or Christian.
I'm Freeman.
Right. So, Mikel, did you want to say something? Sorry.
No.
Oh, so they're all kind. Now, you're supposed to deprive yourself a little bit at that time to feel the Jews were butchered like water during that time. You know, have you heard about this movie called Denial that came out recently? It was in the cinema last year. You can watch it on Amazon Prime, maybe Netflix too, I don't know. It's about Deborah Lipstadt, who's a friend of my in-laws, who is a history professor at Emory. I wanted to bring her here, but it's too costly for us. She was sued by a Holocaust denier, whom she said is a Holocaust denier. There was a movie made about this. But she won the case. I heard her give...
What was she being sued for?
What was she being sued for? Yeah.
She said that he's a Holocaust denier. You understand?
Oh, so like for libel or something?
Yeah.
He was saying
He sued her for libel, and the movie is about that, and how, you know, she had to defend herself in Britain, which is much more difficult to win a libel suit than here. It's a totally different approach. And her lawyers told her, we're not going to bring the survivors to testify, because then we're going to make him legitimate, and we're not going to subjectify. What's the word?
Objectify?
No. Subject the survivors to having to speak with that kind of monster. A person who makes me very emotional. Once said to a survivor to their face, "How much money did you make from the tattoo on your arm?" That kind of person.
Wow.
And
I can't believe there's still people like that.
they won. There are many of them, and we have to fight them. And there are people who dedicate their lives to fighting them.
Rabbi,
so for
Erica Brown wrote a book about what you're speaking about now?
Right. No, she wrote a book in the narrow places about the 3 weeks. She also wrote a book about tshuva, about personal growth. I already started reading her. I can tell you she's she's really good. Now, if you want another recommended author, there's a man in Brooklyn now, a rabbi called Dov Ber Pinson. Dov Ber is Dovber, one word. Dovber. The last name is Pinson, Pinson. His best book...
P-I-N?
Pinson.
Pinson.
Yeah. He...
Sephardic last name.
Yeah. He's a Hasidic rabbi. He also knows music and jazz and psychology. He's incredible. He has a book. He writes about many things, mostly like personal growth through Kabbalistic Hasidic literature. The most powerful book of his that I came across is called Reclaiming the Self. I would recommend that book. Reclaiming the Self.
Are for people like yourself?
I think he's very accessible.
Is he?
I think he's very accessible. He's
He's
very modern.
That I have sometimes when I buy these readings.
No, but I think
check it out from the library if you don't like it.
Reclaiming the Self, I think, is fairly accessible. Now, I discovered earlier this year this thing called Audible. Are you familiar with it? Audible.
From the library?
Audible is the Amazon audiobooks.
Never mind.
So you can download an app, and you can listen to the books in your car. So if you're on the 405, you can listen to it. And that's a great thing. But
too many things on my mind.
But I started saying that, one of the ways to think about fasting is that you're fasting out of solidarity with your ancestors and what they went through. Because Tisha B'Av, it's about all the disasters and calamities of Jewish history, including the Holocaust, including all the pogroms, all the expulsions, everything is condensed into Tisha B'Av. So you're fasting out of solidarity, but you're also learning a lesson in humility. We fast, we feel so weak so quickly, and we remind ourselves, right, how fragile we are. To quote the song from Sting, the rock star Sting. He used to be an English teacher, he's a poet. And on 9/11 he was in Germany, And after the towers fell, he was scheduled to give a concert at night. So he got up and he played that song, Fragile. I don't know if you know that song. It says, all in all, the rain will fall, how fragile we are, how fragile we are. So how fragile we are as a civilization today, and how fragile we are as individuals, that we deprive ourselves of food or drink for a little bit, we already feel, so it's hard to fast. So these 3 weeks, there are restrictions. Now, those 3 weeks, we read every Shabbat of these 3 Shabbats, a very dark haftarah. 2 from Jeremiah, 1 from Isaiah. And they're all about how our ancestors at that point in time in Jewish history, when the first temple stood, King Solomon's temple, we became spiritually and morally corrupt, the rich oppressed the poor, and we completely lost our equilibrium. And Jeremiah is coming and saying, you guys are, what goes around comes around. You know, you are ruining your strength. Your strength comes from your spiritual and moral integrity. And once you compromise that as a nation, you will not be able to withstand your enemies. You're going to lose Israel, the temple is going to be destroyed. People don't like that. He was thrown into jail, he was beaten up, he was almost killed. But the kings who did that to him, nobody even knows their names today. Jeremiah, everybody knows. So I read something from Rabbi Sachs. He's paraphrasing a Danish Protestant philosopher called Søren Kierkegaard. And Kierkegaard said something fantastic. He said, when a king dies, their time in history ends. When a prophet dies, their legacy begins.
Or continues.
Right. Because, you know, those kings that persecuted them, who knows who they are today? Most people don't. But the prophets, their message is truth. Their message is eternal. They're speaking to us too. They're saying to American Jews and to America in general as a nation, you know, their words are timeless. Now, so we're reading those 3 haftarot of rebuke. They always end, by the way, on 2-3 nice verses to cheer us up. It's Shabbat and this and that. But after these 3, now we're going to read the second, this Shabbat B'ezrat Hashem. After the 3, there will become 7 haftarot, prophetic readings, all from Isaiah, from the last part of the book of Isaiah, of hope and joy. And that's when the prophet Isaiah is telling us, when we're in exile, away from Israel, we're depressed, cheer up, get yourself together, stand tall, Hashem will never abandon you, and you will make it back to Israel. And much of Lecha Dodi that we read on Kabbalat Shabbat is based on these words from Isaiah. If you ever read Lecha Dodi, it really talks about being in a state of depression. What's the tune we do here for Lecha Dodi? So we say, what it says there is, shake yourself off from the dust. You have dwelled too long in the valley of tears. Wake up, glow with light. Hashem's presence is now before you. It really talks about rising from profound depression. Because what we need to understand, it's the 3 weeks of national depression, 7 weeks of positive haftarot, of renew yourself, get yourself together. 3 + 7 = 10. Okay? It's okay. He's coming to fix the machine. Thank you for coming, sir. Thank you. So, you understand where we are? We're in the 2 of the 3 haftarot of depression. And then 7 haftarot, 7 Shabbats, we read prophetic sections of joy and overcoming. And what's after that? Rosh Hashanah. So you understand, it's a whole period now that we're going through sadness. And then we're going to climb up the ladder of joy all the way to Rosh Hashanah. You see, the whole thing is planned. All the Jewish year, it's all interconnected. It's like, my brother is an architect, so when he looks in the building, he sees how everything is connected. Most of us don't have that knowledge. But the same thing with understanding the Jewish spiritual annual cycle. We're learning the inner architecture of the spiritual seasons. Right? It's amazing. So, the 17th of Tammuz, what did we say happened on the 17th of Tammuz? Historically.
They first entered, or they started the process.
The siege started. And what happens with the siege? Starvation. Right? A lot of things happened. Now, according to the tradition, the 17th of Tammuz was also the day in which Moses broke the first set of tablets with the 10 Commandments. So the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement in the 1700s, what is Hasidism about? It's taking the Kabbalah, those of us who are in the class on Shabbat, and taking all the Kabbalistic ideas and the 10 divine energies, the spiritual wonder, and turning them into a story and a message about our spiritual and psychological situation in life. It's very deep. So what the Baal Shem Tov is saying is that the breaking of the tablets with the 10 Commandments is the breaking of the tablets of the heart. When the heart is broken, my heart, your heart, inner brokenness. Now, his great-grandson, the Baal Shem Tov's great-grandson, was Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. He was a great Chassid. He had probably a very melancholic soul. He suffered a lot in life, also lost a child. And he said something truly wonderful and so profound. He said in Hebrew, there is nothing more broken, it's the other way around, there is nothing more complete than a broken heart. There is nothing more complete than a broken heart. It means that from the lowest point, redemption begins. I once gave a sermon here in this spiritual season, and I told the story of how Benjamin Netanyahu once told the story of how when he found out that his older brother was killed in the army, and his brother was like a father to him. His brother really raised him. And he admired his brother. He was his role model in life. And then he had to drive. He studied at MIT at the time. So he had to drive from Cambridge, Massachusetts to Ithaca, New York, where his father was a professor of Jewish history with a specialty in Spanish Jewish history, because God forbid that his parents should learn from the media about their son's death. So he tells a story. He called it was a drive from hell. He drove with a friend and his wife. And he said that when he got in front of the house, he saw his father pacing in typical posture with his hands behind his back, like the pensive scholar that he was. And then he saw his face. And at first he was happy. He said, Bibi. He told him in Hebrew, what are you doing here? And then he understood. So he says that his father and mother had these terrible screams. He said it was worse than actually hearing of my brother's death is seeing my parents' reaction. And what I said is that at that moment, a world leader was born. Because what they did is that they set up the Jonathan Institute to fight terrorism in his name. And they invited all kinds of scholars and politicians and senators to come and speak. Gerald Ford was president. They got him involved. They got Ronald Reagan involved afterwards. And ultimately he said that that put his life on the course that ultimately made him go to public service. Now, how was Israel born, the modern state of Israel? It was because of the pogroms that were happening. People said, we can't live like that anymore. And then Herzl came and they said, we're going to resettle Israel, we're going to go back to Israel. So, you know, the darkest points of brokenheartedness are a minute before something new is going to start to be born. If you look at our history, we lost the Second Temple, we lost Israel. That was when Rabbinic Judaism was born. We had to figure out how are we going to survive without a land. And the temple was the center. Everybody would come, Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuot. So then the synagogue became the small temple with a small t, instead of the temple in Jerusalem. Then the daily prayers substituted the sacrifice offerings that used to be brought. Then we became the people of the book, of the prayer book, of the Talmud. We became that people, invincible people, because our existence was now in the books. It wasn't political or military. We made this incredible jump. We reinvented ourselves. Similarly, after the Crusades, which started in the year 1096 in Europe, a third of European Jewry was murdered, came the Hasidim of Ashkenaz. These were Kabbalists of sorts who came out with great spiritual innovations. It was a reaction to the disaster. What did we learn on Shabbat? One of the things we learned is that the Sephardic Kabbalah of Tzfat in the 1500s was also a response to the expulsion from Spain. Why are we being tossed around all the time? And scattered all over the world? It's because God's presence is scattered all over the world. And we have a job. We're in a people on a mission to reintegrate God's presence in the world through doing mitzvot, and that's tikkun olam. Right? And of course, 2 years before the State of Israel was declared at the UN, and 3 years before it was declared by David Ben-Gurion, the ovens in Auschwitz were still on. So that's the idea of there is nothing more complete than a broken heart. And it's a message to all of us in our own lives. Right? And that's the 3 weeks. We have to get in touch with the sadness, but then we're going to harness it and go up from it. And any good psychologist would tell you that not to be in touch with your sadness when bad things happen is very unhealthy. It'll catch up with you. And not in the best of ways. We can never get rid of the pain. There's always pain. It's part of human existence. But that's also why we have, of course, all our rituals, right? We have the Shiva and we have the Shloshim and all these things. It's important to get in touch with the pain. So those 3 weeks are also the broken tablets of the 17th of Tammuz. Moshe smashed the 10 Commandments. It's the brokenness of our heart too, as individuals. And it continues really. We said 3 weeks, right? And then 7 weeks we read happy haftarot of cheering up, and then Rosh Hashanah, and then Yom Kippur. According to the tradition, Yom Kippur is the day we received the second set of 10 Commandments. Okay? So this whole process that started on the 17th of Tammuz culminates on Yom Kippur. We're supposed on Yom Kippur to really not completely, but reintegrate the broken pieces. So it's a journey of the soul. And that's why Yom Kippur is a joyous day. People don't understand it. Some people.
Because they're hungry.
But it's a joyous day. Right? And in the last hour or hour and a half, many of us don't necessarily, if we're connected,
because we don't know what's going
we
on.
feel like we're up.
Just
And it's supposed to be a day in which we completely put aside our physicality in order to be completely spiritual one day. And that's really a whole journey that starts on the 17th of Tammuz until Yom Kippur. And so that's that. And what I wanted to say is that we're lamenting politically, historically. What are we mourning? The price of exile, the price of homelessness. Most of our existence, we were homeless as the Jewish people. We weren't in Israel. And most of our calamities happened to us outside of Israel. So the important thing to add is that there is also spiritual and emotional homelessness. When we have that disconnect from ourself, from our inner core, from God, when we're overwhelmed by the material and psychological demands that the world makes upon us. So when we read about the exile of our people from Israel and the pain and the suffering, also in Tisha B'Av, we need to understand that there's also a message here about our own state of being away from home, away from God, away from our inner core. Right? So there are two levels to the exile that we are lamenting and mourning. It's the political, historical exile of the Jewish people, but it's also the spiritual and emotional exile of the neshama in the world. Okay? Good?
wow.
Question about the
Yes,
parashat?
please. I can't believe time went so fast today. Yes, please.
Schneider has a question,
Question
about
about-
the parashat.
Question about the
He
parashat.
reads it ahead of time.
Okay, so it's Moses is telling the military guys, they took the field against the Midian. This is on line 7:31:7. They took the field against Midian as the Lord had commanded Moses and slew every male. Okay, then if you go to, then they came back, and Moses was angry at them because they yet
Allowed the
you
women
have-
to live.
Yeah, you have spared every female.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they are the very ones who, at the bidding of Balaam, induced the Israelites to trespass against the Lord in the matter of Peor, so that the Lord's community was struck
Sure.
by the plague.
So what's the answer? What's the question, my friend?
Okay, the question is, why do they have? Why? Then he says, therefore, slay every male among the children, and also slay every woman. Why do they have to slay the male children?
So right. So if you open the book of Joshua, which is the sixth book of the Bible after the first five, it's even worse. You have these campaigns. In the ancient world, they didn't have the Geneva Convention. They didn't have human rights. Not only that, they didn't have it 7 decades ago in Europe. That's part of our history. It's hard for us to grapple with that, with our modern sensibilities. It's in the Torah, which means that there's also a positive message to be redeemed from it, and I'll give you one for this one. So the explanation is that we were fighting a people called Midian, the Midianites. The word Midian in Hebrew basically is the same word, the same letters as the word Madon. Madon means strife, internal division. So the way the sages explain it is that Midian represents internal friction and division in the family, in the community, with your closest friends, wherever it may be, at work, that internal frictions and divisions, is the worst thing. And the lesson to be derived from it is that we must pursue any avenue to fight internal frictions. Midian is Madon, it's internal divisions. And we'll end by saying that we only went 3 times to exile as a people. Once to Egypt after Joseph was sold by the brothers. Another time when King Solomon's 2 sons couldn't get along, so they split it into the 10 tribes and the 2 tribes, and the 10 tribes were exiled forever. The 3rd time, when the Romans defeated us, when they had the siege on Jerusalem that we spoke about today, inside the walls, the Jews who wanted to fight the Romans and the Jews who wanted to reach an accommodation with the Romans were killing each other. We had Jewish domestic civil war. So only these 3 times we went to exile. Joseph being sold by his brothers, King Solomon's 2 sons can't get along, and thirdly, during the Roman time, we were killing each other with the different factions. And all the different empires who tried to eradicate the Jewish people, from the ancient Greeks and Babylonians and Assyrians and Persians all the way to Nazism and Stalinism, they didn't succeed. Which brings us to the conclusion that there's only one people that can destroy the Jewish people, and that is the Jewish people.
Oh, yeah.
So the war against Midian represents the war against Madon.
Madon, tell me again what that means?
Internal friction.
But killing
Right.
the male children, they didn't do anything. They were just innocent children.
That's in the Torah. You can do one or 2 things. You have to grapple with it and deal with it and try to redeem it and give it the kind of significance I've just offered, and remain in the dialogue within the tradition. That's how we stay within Judaism. Now, I lost the other part of it. I'm sorry. I forgot. I was going to say. All right. So, that's what I wanted to say. Well, this was conclude. What's our name? We're called the people of
The book.
The book.
Right. No, but what's our people? What's the name of the Jewish state?
Israel.
Israel. We're the people of Israel, right? What does Israel mean? It was Jacob's name.
Oh,
He
it's
struggled with an angel all night long when he was alone. It represents an inner battle that he had. And at the end, the angel tells him, the divine being tells him, I'm going to give you a new name, which represents your new destiny. Because now you're at another level. And your name is Israel. What does it mean? Ki sarita im Elokim va'adam v'tuchal. Because you struggled with men in the plural, with people, and with God, and you prevailed. So you struggle. We're called, Israel means a struggler, the one who struggles with God and with people and prevails. So it doesn't mean that everything that we read is always so comfortable, but you struggle with it and you learn it and you try and draw meaning from it and vitality from it. It's the best answer I can give you. Okay?
Okay, Israel.
All right. So hold on. Let's. Some people want to leave, so let's let those who want to leave, and we can continue a few minutes.
Okay.
All right. So thank you for coming.
Shabbat shalom.